Anyone else want to share, ask, read? Lance, welcome.
Hey everybody. I I feel reluctant to share, but I also feel like um not sharing for me is an elephant in the room. And this is such a beautiful satsang. This is a little different, but I've shared an after satsang um being pretty gutted and grief-stricken by what's happened in politics in the United States. And one of the reasons I don't want to share is because just I move to give it. I'm noticing that I move to give it as little energy as possible. And I do catch myself getting caught up. I do catch myself engaging in ways that aren't helpful, for instance, on social media. I think sometimes on social media, there can be a way to connect our grief, and for me personally, this just feels like such a direct attack. It feels like my read of it is that, a lot of people are saying it's an economic response, and I think that's partially true, but I think ultimately it's well, here I go into the story. Here I go into the story. So I'm not going to do that, but I think I'd love to hear, I remember when uh, there was the attack in Israel and I brought up Gaza and Hamas, and you said so much that I think is, I think I feel like I could just go back to that moment in Satsang, the video. Um,
What did I say then, roughly?
um, that this is how Maya is. Maya has always been this way. If you feel called to do things, then please do that. Whether that's marching or resisting or helping people who are suffering. Um,
I remember saying that now. Thank you. Yes.
yeah,
That was good advice.
it really was. And I think that's one of the reasons I haven't brought it up. It's been 2 weeks now, and it affects the whole world. And after satsang, people have been really helpful. And it's been really helpful to, hear that some people are just fine, right? People that I thought might be upset with me, they were fine. And it was a little upsetting to me that they weren't upset with me, but that's that's okay. Um, and you know, I did, in after satsang, I said, hey, if anybody's on the other side, so to speak, I hope I'm not making anybody feel uncomfortable. And somebody did speak up who um, did vote the opposite of me, and I was surprised, and that was a lovely. I'm really grateful that that person was brave in that way. Um, because most of people in the after satsang group felt similar to me. But I think my ultimate resolve at this point is, like you said, the world is always this way. It's always, the Buddhists say 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. That's the deal here. In samsara, it's, we as humans, we just want the 10,000 joys. We don't want the 10,000 sorrows. Um, and so my commitment today for me now is to see this as an opportunity to turn away in a way that feels good to me, and know that I will engage in ways that feel helpful if that feels appropriate. Um, for me, this is about misogyny and racism and homophobia. That's mostly what's up for me. And so I want to turn away, and I also, I read a quote recently that if you don't resist, then you're siding with the forces that are harming people. And I think there's some truth in that, in Maya.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you sharing with us these things. And for everyone as well, like to echo what Lance said, which is that we all have our different political views, you see. Some of us will be Democrat supporters, some of us will be Republican supporters, some of us will be something else, some of us will hate the whole thing. Some of us will be confused by the whole thing. Some of us will have very strong opinions one way or the other. I want you to know it doesn't matter what your political persuasions are, you are welcome here. You're welcomed here with love and affection. I don't care who you voted for, or if you didn't vote, or whatever. None of that matters to me. That is superficial. That is utterly superficial. I know that might be offensive for some people to hear me say that. So I'm not intent, just like Lance doesn't want to offend anyone who has opposing views to him. He's sharing his experience, his emotions, and that's a beautiful thing for him to do. So thank you again, Lance, for that. So mate, I'm sharing my feelings. I don't care. I couldn't care less who you voted for, what your politics are. I couldn't care less. You are welcome here. I wouldn't want anyone to feel unwelcome because of something like this. You could adore Kamala Harris, you could adore Joe Biden, you could adore Donald Trump, or you could hate them all, or something else. I don't care. There's only love for you here. Publicly, I stay out of politics. Privately, pretty much too. But for some of you, you would have had one-to-ones with me about this topic because many people have found this difficult. And sometimes what I do in one-to-ones is I present you with opposing views. I don't present you with opposing views because they're my view. I present that you with opposing views because empathy is very important when it comes to these matters. If you find yourself very disturbed by something like a political decision, I encourage you to listen to the opposing views with an open heart, as much of an open heart as you can. You you will likely end up still disagreeing and still having your own original views. That's fine. But at least you have increased your ability to understand where other people are coming from. You see, it might be true that the majority of, or I know it might not be majority, but the in the electoral system in the US, the electoral college system, I'm speaking to you more now, Lance. Your view might be, oh, look, I'm now living in a country where people have voted for misogyny, for racism, for bigotry. Yeah, this might be your conclusion. And that may be the correct conclusion. What do I know? I don't know. I'm not an expert in these things. But you might find out if you listen to people and what they're saying who voted for Trump in this case, you might find out that that is not why they voted for Trump. See, we all have our own experiences, our life experiences, our traumas, our trials and tribulations, our difficulties. And this shapes our character, this shapes our beliefs, this shapes our view of humanity, and it also shapes our politics. We all have some relationship to politics, whether we know it or not. You know, even if you're apolitical or apathetic about politics, that is a relationship with politics, we can say. So if we all have our life experiences. Tom has his own life experience. And each one of you have your own life experiences. It shapes your understanding, your relationship with authority, your relationship with government, your relationship with politics, how much you trust institutions, how much you distrust institutions, your own personal experiences, what you think of other people, what you prioritize when you choose a leader. So first thing that's very important is try and listen to the other side as much as possible. When I follow politics, I always try and listen. There are a few things I do. It's very similar to scriptural study or study of spiritual texts and things. One, always go to the source material if possible, because there's often disinformation and misinformation on all sides. It's not always easy to find the source material, and sometimes you don't have the time or energy. But if possible, try and go to the source material. That's one thing. And the second thing is, it's not quite as good as going to the source material, but it's still good. Is try and listen to lots of different viewpoints. If you're really pro one side, try as much as possible to listen to the other side. You won't enjoy it, by the way. Yeah, you won't enjoy it. It might infuriate you. But this is if you really want to have a good understanding of why people act differently to you, why people, in this case, the action was voting, right? Why people vote differently to you. And in this case, again, I'm speaking to you, Lance, you lost. Your team lost. You're in a team. It's like a team match, like a sports match. Your team lost. Yeah. When your football team loses or your basketball team loses or whatever, these sports fans, and when their team loses, they get miserable, don't they? I know this is not just a sports match for you, Lance. I know that. But your team lost. So either you're living in a terrible country where, you know, maybe half or near half or over half of the population are racists or misogynists or willing to turn a blind eye to those things. Or there's something else going on, or a mixture of both or something, you see. But how do you know the answer? You have to listen to what the others are saying. It's not pleasant. And you might have already done that. I'm not saying you have or haven't, but that's really important. I'm speaking to everyone now. It's same when you have an argument with your mother, father, brother, sister, husband, wife, son, daughter, friend, relative, workmate, or work colleague, or boss, or person you're managing, etc., etc. They're always different points of view. You will not understand why people voted the other way to you unless you listen to them. And there's not one reason. There's going to be a whole load of different people who voted for Trump for different reasons. It's not they all had the same reason. And maybe they're wrong, but it's still really important to listen to them. It also will help you. It will help you deal with this. Now, you may not be ready to do that now. I don't know. It depends how emotionally distressed you are. But when you feel strong enough at some point, this is what I recommend. One of the things, if you haven't already. We had the same, very similar thing here in the UK with the EU referendum, which tore families apart up and down the country and friendships. And I remember going to the pub with a few friends some years ago now. When was the EU referendum? 2016 or something? I don't know. I can't even remember when it was. Good few years ago. And where I live, typically, I live in London, right? It's a city. It's an urban area. So we tend to be more on the left, on the liberal side. And in the EU referendum, that means Remain. So I had lots of friends who are like, oh gosh, these idiots who are voting it to leave the EU, they're idiots. They're fools. They're stupid. So you basically got one half of the country thinking the other half of the country are idiots or stupid or ignorant. And it's not for the EU referendum, it's not that simple. There are lots of different points of view and lots of people had different experiences. And it's easy for a Londoner to say, oh, these other people are idiots. But they have their own experience of what's happened to them. They have their own life story, you know? How many of you have, sorry to belabor this point, by the way, but how many of you have listened to somebody tell you their side of the story and it's so convincing? And then you listen to someone give you a different angle and it's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of any of that, you know? And that still happens to me all the time now, even though I like to think I'm quite wise and I can, hear what I can see through narratives. I'm still not very good at it. I'm still very easily fooled by a narrative, you know? Probably the last person who speaks to me convincingly, I'll agree with them, you know? Because most topics we're talking about, we don't really know that much about them. We just go on what other people say. This is why source material is very important if you can. And empathy. Empathy is very important. If you ever feel like you're a victim to your circumstance, oh my gosh, how did I end up in this mess? Why me? Why my country? Why my place? One thing that should be a sign that you need to listen to other people's points of view. It's also a sign that you may have emotional trauma that's being expressed here. So, for example, I'll take me as an example. Maybe if someone voted for a leader and I thought they were racist, right? And then I personally have had experiences, negative experiences with people being racist towards me, you see, it's doubly painful because my own personal wounds, my own personal experience with this topic, you see. So it's like someone, and again, sorry, excuse the metaphor, but it's like someone spitting onto my open wound. I've got a wound because maybe people treated me unfairly when I was younger. And now they voted this guy in who's racist, say, just an example. And that's like, oh my gosh, it's doubly painful now. It's almost like, can't you see my pain? Can't you see what I've gone through? Now you've just done this. So it's like a double slap in the face. But it also points to the fact that I need to heal as well, and that I have unresolved issues. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with me in that, and we all have issues. We all have well, many of us have issues. Most of us do. It can also point inwardly that way. That next thing, this is all Bhagwan's doing. This is all Raman is doing. This is God's plan. How do we know it's God's plan? It's happening, apparently. Not truly happening, but on that level, it's happening. It's Bhagwan's plan. Trust him. He knows what he's doing. He doesn't make mistakes. Did you hear about the Chinese farmer? He only had one possession, a horse. And one day, the worst thing in the world happened to him. His horse ran away. And he was very lucky. He had a neighbor who was there to tell him how terrible this was. His neighbor comes to him and says, "Oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is awful. This is the most awful thing in the world. Your horse, your only possession, by the way, in case the farmer didn't realize, your only possession has run away. Now have nothing. You have nothing." Again, in case the farmer didn't realize what had happened, he's very lucky he had this neighbor to tell him. This is tragic news. This is tragic. Oh my gosh, it's terrible, 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 terrible. Your only horse, your only possession, your only means of wealth and survival has run away. You are fucked. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. Yeah? Your life is fucked. That's it. You're finished. There's no hope. There's no hope. This is pretty much the worst thing ever. Fuck. Oh my gosh. Oh, terrible, terrible, terrible. Is it? What would you do if you were the farmer and this is your neighbor or neighborhood or your community saying this to you, right? The echo chamber, the social media. Yeah. They're all the voices, all the people telling you what's happening. You are fucked. You've lost your only horse. You are the Chinese farmer. You are the Taoist farmer. Farmer goes, okay. See, the farmer is a wise farmer. The wise farmer knows not to listen to this neighbor. The farmer knows this is God's plan. He doesn't understand how this situation can get better, but he has faith. Next day, what happens? I know lots of you know this story. Next day, the horse comes back and brings with it, let's say, how many horses? 9 other horses. 9 other horses. The horse comes back and brings back 9 other horses. They've got now the farmer's got 10 horses. 10 horses. And our farmer is very lucky because he's got a neighbor who's going to tell him all about it. Oh my gosh, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. It's amazing. Who would have thought this is brilliant? The neighbor's jumping up and down. Let's celebrate. This is brilliant. It's amazing news. This is the best thing happen. Woo! Woo, woo, woo. Let's have a party. Dun, 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 dun. Tonight's gonna. Okay. You see? I wonder how Lance you would have felt if you won. You see? Our farmer, our protagonist, he's a wise man. He knows not to pay too much attention to all this stuff, you see. He's like, okay, whatever. Whatever you say to a neighbor. He's not too impressed. You know. He's like Shania Twain, you know. That don't impress me much. That's how a farmer is. You know. He knows things can come and go. And in our story, the next day, his son is riding one of the horses and he falls off the horse. The farmer's son is riding one of the horses and he falls off the horse and he breaks his leg and goes to hospital. And very lucky for our farmer, he's got a neighbor who's going to tell him all about it. The commentariat, the commentator, the neighbor's ready with the commentary. Oh my gosh, this is awful. If those horses hadn't come back, your son wouldn't have ridden horses and your son wouldn't have broken his leg. This is terrible. Your only son, your only son. Now he's injured in hospital. No, this is tragic. If only that horse had never come back with those other horses, then your son would have been fine. But now he's broken his leg. This is terrible. Farmer goes, okay. The next day, the Chinese army comes to town and they're looking for conscripts. And they conscript all the young boys in the village. And they take them to war where they await almost certain death. But they don't take our farmer's son because he's injured in hospital. And luckily for our farmer, he has a neighbor to tell him all about it. The neighbor goes, oh my gosh, how lucky are you that your son is in hospital with a broken leg? Because if he wasn't in hospital, He would have been conscripted by the army and sent to his almost certain death. Dun, 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 dun. Let's celebrate. And the story continues. Stuff happens in life. It seems shit at the time. But the wise part of you, if instead of listening to the mind, which is the neighbor, or other people's minds and society around you, the echo chamber, instead of listening to those people and or yourself, you go to your heart, you'll realize all is well. All is always well. And all this other stuff is superficial. You'll see. This is all God's plan. The mind will tell you otherwise sometimes. Don't believe it. Often these things point to our own wounds, our own personal wounds, our own belief systems. And there's an opportunity there for you to work on those things. Maybe. Sometimes you might just be in a, fascist country. Maybe, maybe you find that you're living in a fascist, racist, misogynistic, bigoted country. Maybe that's what's happening. It's okay. If you want to be an activist and march or protest, then and that feels right to you, do it. Do what is right, feels right for you. Before you do it, my advice is make sure you go to the source material. So, for example, anything you've heard about Trump, yeah, don't just listen to the clips, listen to the whole speech. Make sure you got your facts straight and listen to the other point of view as much as you can first. Not just one other person's point of view. Listen to 5, 6 other people, 10 other people's points of view. And really listen. And I also know all is well. This is my general advice. There are lots of reasons why people vote the way they vote. It's not usually one reason. It's not usually that simple. Or maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe they're just racist, homophobic, bigoted, ignorant people. Maybe that's what it is too. That could be it. What do I know? There might be a whole range of different reasons there as well. The Thank you for allowing me to slightly indulge in that when I told the story of the Chinese farmer. It's a very powerful, simple, powerful story if you understand it. Because you think things are not always as they seem. And when things appear to be going very bad, if we have faith in Bhagavan, we'll see how good it comes out of it. It's amazing. It's amazing how this works. You'll see. Lance, what do you think of what I've said to you? I know I've spoken at for quite some time there. Did any of it, did you, anything, please tell me if there's anything you didn't like about what I said as well, please.
I appreciated everything you said, and we've talked about this on one-on-ones before as well. And I always appreciate what you say. The part that helps me the most right now is trusting that this is God's plan, and for me, even knowing that this isn't really happening, um, um, s- helps me. Um, and as far as listening to other people, I have done that, and um, it's pretty exhausting. You even said that, like, it's not going to be fun, and you're right. And sometimes it's
And
just down.
I knew you would have as well, because I know you and, I know what kind of person you are. I knew you would have done this
uh,
already, but it's,
yeah, and so I think for a lot of my life, being a gay kid in the 60s and 70s, I never thought uh, LGBTQIA plus liberation would have gotten as far as it did. That we can get married, that we can visit during the AIDS crisis, some partners could not visit their dying partners in hospitals. So we've come a long way, and it's my understanding that a lot of what's happening is people want to go back. They want to take away our rights, our marriage rights, our ability to not get fired. This is just on a personal level, right? It's, and so when I have these conversations, I'm dealing with people who don't respect me as a full human being. Um, so anyway, so my point is that on some level,
and so can I
um,
just quickly butt in and ask you, do you think everyone who voted for Trump was voting for that reason?
of course not. But I think there's a lot. And when I look at the, some of the analysis, people voted for democratic issues, but then they didn't vote for Kamala, right? And in the United States, a big commercial that was put out by the Republicans was um, an ad that basically said your children are going to go to school and come back a different gender. There was this whole transphobic fear that was effective. That was very effective. And, it's such a small population. It's ugly. It's, so people are voting against their own interests so that their children don't come back a different gender from school. And it's insulting. And you're right. A lot of this is very personal. I was bullied as a kid. I was physically and verbally assaulted on a daily basis almost, or, the threat of it. And the bullies always won when I was a kid, right? The bullies always got their way, and they were assholes and they were bad people, and they lied, cheated, and stole. And it's happening again, right? And my parents voted for him, right? They didn't understand the bully when I was a kid. They don't understand the bully now that we're all senior citizens. Um, so it's personal, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And so, at least for now, I think what's helping me most is stepping back, not getting involved in these conversations because it's so heated. Um, and
It is. It is.
a lot of my friends are cutting off their family. They're like, this is it. This is it. I can't. This is about something so personal and deep, and it's about my values as a human being. Um, so it's intense.
Have you thought about that yourself?
No,
Why
no,
not?
'cause
Why not?
because I do love my parents very much. I'm very lucky and that I'm close with them. Both my brother and I are gay. They love my brother's partner. They're friends with my brother's partner's
But they
family.
they voted for the bully,
Oh,
no? In
yeah,
your mind? So
yeah.
how can you reconcile that? Why not cut them off?
Um, because I see their innocence. You know, my dad is rags to riches kind of story. So when I ask them why they vote for this guy, they say, "Well, we don't like everything he says, but we get what we want." And what they want is, you know, my dad is rags to riches. They want more money. They want to pay less taxes. They own three properties. You know, they have a lot, but it still upsets them very much that other people might not have to work as hard to get what they have. And and they think that it's just as easy for instance, a person of color to do what my dad did. They think there's no difference. I've had that discussion with them. They can't, you know, they don't understand white privilege. It's probably a bad choice of words, um, but I can see their innocence in it. You know, people can't believe. I can't believe other than what I believe when I believe it. You know, so
Yeah.
I understand that they can't either.
So I just wanted to use that's a very important point, that last bit you just said, in that what you're basically saying is that none of us can choose our beliefs,
Right.
you see. So you let's say you believe in something called white privilege and they don't. You know, you can't choose not to believe what you believe, and they can't choose to believe something they don't believe. And that so in that sense, everyone's innocent. You know, you said that you can see their innocence. Everyone's like that. You know, let's say that I am very racist. You know, let's say I'm a very racist person. It's probably because the way I've been brought up and the way I've been brainwashed and, you know, the beliefs that have been put into me by those around me. And I can't choose not to believe that until some, you know, some events come together, some karma comes away and shows me something else. You see? So even these sorts of bigoted beliefs are innocent. You know, most people who are genuinely bigoted, they don't think they're bigoted, do they? They think they're honest, decent people trying to do the right thing, even if they're not, even if they're wrong. And that doesn't make it easier for you. Or maybe it does in some ways. You know, the people who bullied you at school, you know, I wonder what they think about the whole thing now. I mean, some of them will probably, I remember when I was younger, I now look back and I say there's some things I said to some people at school. It must have been very hurtful. I had no idea I was hurting them at the time. And I regret those things, you know. I feel ashamed of the things I said to some people, you know. But at the time, I didn't know any better. I was just a kid. And the people who bullied you, some of them will maybe still be like that now. And that's very sad. And some people will probably, some of them may regret the way they treated you or people like you or other, you know, other people in your situation. It might be a source of shame for them. So this is the empathy I'm talking about. I'm not saying it will change your view, but it does change the context, the framework, you see. And the fact that you haven't cut with your parents shows that. And on a personal note, I'm very glad you haven't, you know. Sometimes we do have to cut people out of our lives. they're toxic. Doesn't mean we just stop loving them or caring for them. I'd like to think if any of you had to cut someone out of your life, and some part of you wishes them the best, you still want them to be well. Maybe that's not possible. I don't know. If you can accept your parents, that's a really good start. And I sense when you talk about your parents, you still judge them. Like there's a sense that, and tell me if I'm wrong. There's a sense that they're kind of greedy, you know, they just want more money for themselves. I wonder if you explore it. I wonder, and it might be that's the case. I don't know, but I wouldn't surprise me if there's something if it's not quite just that. You know, often it can be about anyway. It's something to explore. It's something for you to explore because generally speaking, it's not as simple as that. It's not like, they're rich, greedy bastards, It's generally not that. It's usually like, the pain you've gone through in your life, you see, they would have gone through pain and difficulties in their life. And it might be very difficult for them to see the pain they've gone through and see someone else maybe just get money given to them or get a leg up when they didn't. And it's not as simple as them being greedy and self-centered and look, they've got three properties. Why can't they give some to someone else? It's also emotionally what they've been through in their life experience. It's like, oh my gosh, I had to really struggle. I had to bust a gut. I had to sacrifice. I could have been out dancing every night, partying, but I wasn't. I gave that up so I could succeed. And now we're just giving these people a shortcut, something like this, and that's not necessarily the same as being selfish and greedy and ungenerous. That's actually like, well, there's a value to struggle, and it's not always good to just give people things easily. This kind of thing, very rarely is it, oh yeah, I'm just really greedy and I just want more money. You know, you look at the billionaires in the world. Yeah, people have got more money than they know what to do with, right? And they're still earning more money. They're still trying to expand their businesses, right? They've got more money than they could ever use or spend. They're still earning more money. Why? You see, it's not about money. There's other stuff going on. It's not just because they're greedy bastards, typically. Could be. But usually it's not, it's deeper than this. The more you understand, when you notice you're judging people, if you are, Lance, and this is for everyone, if you notice you're just thinking of them as greedy, you're actually subtly othering them. There's a subtle othering. Can you feel it energetically? Yeah. They become the other. And this means you haven't understood them. Or there's an aspect to them you haven't understood. It means you need to explore their point of view further. That's a great question you can ask is why? So for example, let's say you come to a conclusion, and I'm being very blunt and I'm probably being oversimplistic, and this may not represent the way you actually feel, Lance. I'm just going to use it as an example. Let's say that your thought is they've got they're wealthy and they're selfish and they're greedy and they just love money and they're materialistic, superficial people, right? And maybe that's your judgment. I'm not saying that is, but let's just say that is my judgment or your judgment or something. The question you ask is why? When we stop asking why, then we just land on a judgment. They're greedy. They're bigoted. Why? What is their life story? What is their emotional story? What pain have they gone through? Oh, you hate brown people? You racist? You hate brown people? Why do you hate brown people? Why? Let's understand. They might still be wrong. You might still think they're bigoted at the end of it all, but at least you're getting closer to actually understanding. There's humanity in everyone. And doesn't mean they're right in what they're doing, but the more we understand, the less painful it is for us, generally speaking. Very rare do you just get the pure sociopath who's just like evil. It's incredibly rare. You look at people who do atrocious things, and almost always they've had an atrocious life. And almost always, if had their life, we'd probably be the same as them, you know? And maybe if we had, and I'm sorry to talk about your parents, it's just that's the example you gave. So I'm just latching onto it. And so apologies if what I'm saying is not accurate. But if we had your parents' life, we'd probably be just like them. And if they had your life, they'll probably be just like you. And if I had your life, I'll probably be just like you. You know, if you grew up in a Muslim society where everyone's Muslim, you'd probably be a Muslim, or for any same for any other religion, you know. If you grow up in a liberal society, you're more likely to be liberal minded. So it's usually not as simple as this. We have to ask why. Oh, you value money. Oh, you don't want to give, you got money, you don't want to give it to other people. Why? Explore it, listen, understand. Otherwise, your understanding stopped, and that will cause suffering because then you're other than there's subtle othering and subtle judgment, and then you feel like a victim, and then you feel like I'm surrounded by these people who are selfish and bigoted, but actually got their own life story that explains why they are the way they are. Again, not excusing them, but we're explaining. What do you think, Lance?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I have done a lot of that work and I have had a lot of those conversations and I've had years of therapy. So, so yeah,
Good.
I can see a lot of that and I appreciate what you said. And I think it's, it's so complicated. There's so many issues that are coming up for a lot of us, I mean, just the environment, it's the most, powerful man in the world is somebody who doesn't believe in science and doesn't think what's happening in the environment is real. And looks like we're pretty fucked. Um, that's just one of, I mean, that's part.
Again, why?
Why doesn't he believe in science?
Yeah.
I saw him um, at a meeting with probably 10 other scientists, and they presented all these things that were, um, pretty crucial to saving the planet. Things are changing and going downhill, and he said, I don't believe any of it. And they were like, oh, okay, well, please tell us why. You don't. And he's like, I just don't. And they're like, okay, fine. Why? They asked him why. It's like, "Eh," and he just went, no, everything's gonna be fine. And that was
Be
it.
interesting because obviously in that example, and it might be that that's the only examples that exist. But in that example, he obviously wasn't willing to explain why. There is always a why. There's always a why.
Well, my guess is that, he can make a lot of money if he doesn't have to be concerned about the planet. He and his,
Mm.
yeah, that's the only thing I could think of.
Think harder. Think harder. I would
Okay.
recommend. I'd recommend you think
I
harder.
don't want to think harder, Tom.
Because otherwise your conclusion, and it might be the correct conclusion. I'm not saying it's not correct, but otherwise your conclusion is going to be he's a greedy bastard. Now that might be the correct conclusion, but that means that, but usually it's not that simple. Usually there are other reasons going. Usually it's not that. Usually there's something else going on. But maybe it is that.
I think, at this point, it's fresh.
And again, it's the othering. Then again, it's like, well, he's a different class of human being. He's a greedy bastard. He's not like us. We're nice, kind, caring people. He's a greedy bastard. You see, and then there's no meet. You can't. There's no meeting. He doesn't have humanity. I have humanity. We have humanity. He doesn't. You see. But
Yeah.
usually it's not like that. Usually there's a whole different point of view that you're not seeing. And maybe I'm wrong. And that is why he's acting the way he is acting.
Yeah. And I've done, work where I reflect on, who he is to me and what's that bringing up. And it's very humbling, my inner fascist, I get to see my inner fascist, my inner, I know what's right. I know
That's
the I
that's
know how things should go. So yeah,
that's
I've done
right.
that work too. But I
Yeah.
think at this point, everything that you said,
Even the way you phrase it, he doesn't believe in science. It's very one-sided. You know, as someone with a science background, and they did this with COVID as well. They said, don't believe the science. As someone with a science background, as someone who's a doctor, in the medical community, we were livid because there's so many different views on these things. I was talking to a friend of mine who works in the climate science industry, and he was saying there's so many different views on the climate science. It's not as open and shut as people make out. There are lots of holes, there are lots of problems with the models. No one talks about it. And this is someone who works in carbon capture. So it's not like there is the science. It's very rare in science is there the science, especially for complex systems. Yeah. So when we're talking about biological systems, organic systems, it's incredibly complicated. And when you're talking about like subatomic particles, it's much simpler. We've got quantum mechanics. It describes everything very accurately. When it comes to biological systems, it's very complex. And there's usually a whole range of opinions, and it's based on statistics and models. It's not like physics or chemistry. Biology is not like physics and chemistry. It's much more complex. That's why if you give a drug to one person, it has one effect. You give the same drug to another person, it has a different effect because it's not simple. So there are lots of different, when it comes to climate science, there isn't such thing as that's the science, you know. There's also a whole load of groupthink that happens in science. I've witnessed it many times. So I've got to be very careful. And that's why when you go to the data, if you actually go and read the papers yourself, then you might that's the source material. You'll see that it's not as clear cut as you think it is. Notice I'm not giving any point of view here because that's not my role. I'm not here to tell you what to think or what not to think. I'm just giving you, I'm letting you, I want to explore it with you. Otherwise, your conclusion will be there are a whole bunch of people that are essentially evil bastards on some level. They're just greedy bastards. They don't give a shit about anyone apart from themselves. They just want to make money and that's it. And that could be correct.
I want to apologize because we were having such a beautiful satsang and I brought Maya into this big time. So
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. This is what satsang is for. But I know I totally get why you want to apologize. I totally get it.
yeah, I changed direction of the satsang, but I
Well,
appreciate it.
no, we all appreciate you, Lance. If anyone's not appreciating Lance right now, then you need to do the same thing I've been advising. You need to think, why is he talking this way? Why is he speaking this way? There's a reason. You need to understand Lance. If anyone's sitting thinking, oh gosh, why is Lance talking about this stuff? Yeah. It's a spiritual meeting. You know, we're having such a nice satsang until Lance brought Mara along. You need to do the same thing. You need to think, actually, why is he talking about this stuff? This stuff is distressing him. It's causing him pain and suffering and misery. It's important stuff. I'm really glad you've raised it. This is what satsang is for. It's for all of this stuff. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's so easy for us to judge someone else. Oh, Lance, oh my gosh. You know, oh, Trump, oh my gosh. Everyone has a story. The more we understand the story, the more we'll realize we are no different to Trump. We're no different to Kamala. We're no different to Lance. We're no different to Tom. There are incredibly rare exceptions of genuine sociopaths, they usually have some sort of brain disorder. Yeah, it's incredibly rare. Yeah. Most people, like you got mass voting for one, that's not going to be like everyone's a sociopath. Highly unlikely. If you come to the conclusion, oh, they're just evil people, they're just horrible people, and we're caring people, and they're not, then you fall into that trap. It means you haven't understood them fully. Usually, maybe I'm wrong. Honestly, maybe I'm wrong. It means you haven't understood them properly. It means you also don't understand yourself well enough. Because what happens when you understand yourself more and more and more, you start to see yourself in everyone and everyone in yourself. The people who voted for Trump are no different to you. The people who voted for Kamala Harris, no different from you. The people who didn't vote because they think they're all rubbish, they're no different to you. You know, people across the world, they're no different to you. The jihadis, the terrorists, they're no different to you. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not excusing behavior. I'm saying we can understand, and this will help us in our spiritual journey. Ultimately, this is all Maya. This is all illusion, and all is well. And this is not even happening. This is not even happening. So don't worry. But sometimes I like to get into it a bit more because that's helpful on those different levels for you. And if you can see yourself othering, if you can see yourself judging, well, the only explanation I can think of is that, they just want to make money. It's usually not that simple. It might be that simple. Usually it isn't. Usually there's a whole load of other stuff you'll be missing then in their narrative, in their way of thinking. If you study the history of civilizations and you look at people, even when they've done terrible things, most of them aren't saying, oh, I just want more money. There's usually a whole load of other stuff going on. If I've said anything to you that is offensive, please forgive me. If I haven't said anything to you that's offensive, it's just a matter of time. Eventually, I probably will. So if I've said anything to offend you today, please forgive me. My intention is never to offend. It's always to help. If I haven't said anything to you offensive today, please forgive me for the future where I probably will at some point say something silly or offensive in the future that will upset you. So the more real we get, sometimes the easier it is to offend you. Yeah? But I'm only trying to help. So I'm sorry if I get it wrong or if I'm not as skillful as I could be. Or if I just harp on about stuff you already know. That can be quite annoying as well. So sorry about that too. I think this has been a wonderful satsang. We've covered the path of knowledge from Hester. We've covered the path of bhakti from Demetrius. We've covered some Maya, some politics, some personal stories, prejudice, emotional issues with Lance. This is truly wonderful. And we had silence and we had love and chanting. And you even got to see me make a fool of myself trying to sing. Three drums. Yes. So, what more could we ask for? All is This is all Bhagwan's plan. Be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. Each and every one of you. Be true to yourself. And just taking those three again, Hester, Demetrius, Lance, you've all been true to yourself in what you've brought to Satsang today. And I really, really, really appreciate that so much. I love it. Absolutely love it. And I wanted to encourage you all to carry on doing that, being yourself, being true to yourself, bringing things here that you wanted to bring here. It's wonderful. And I will do the same. Thank you so much, everyone. My love to you all. I'll be back Sunday, 3 p.m. UK time, next Thursday, 8 p.m. UK time. Keep Bhagwan in your hearts. Bow your head. Let him put his feet onto your head. May you see without distortion. May you have love for all beings, including yourself. Love and forgiveness for yourself, for all beings. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.